Miami Dolphins brought home the dub in Week 13, and you know what that means. It's time for Club Dub here on Locked On Dolphins.
You are Locked On Dolphins, your daily Miami Dolphins podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, Miami, welcome to another episode of Locked On Dolphins. It is your team every day here on the Locked On Network. I'm your host, Kyle Krabs, a lifelong Miami Dolphins fan, host of Locked On Dolphins, co-host of Locked On NFL Scouting, author of Touchdown Miami on Substack, NFL staff writer for A to Z Sports. I want to give a special welcome and shout out to our everydayers because it is your team every day. We don't just say it, we live it here on the Locked On Network, and all of you have helped us to make Locked On the #1 sports podcast network in the world. Thank you all so very much for that honor. We are reacting to the Dolphins' 21-17 victory over the New Orleans Saints in Week 13 here today on the show. Today's episode of Locked On Dolphins is brought to you by GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off of your first purchase. We want to get into some game balls. We want to get into the biggest surprises of this game, some snap counts of note, and some usage trends. A little bit of everything here today in a Club Dub episode. We have had 5 of these now this season versus 7 post-game shows that have been group therapy sessions. So the scale's evening out a little bit, which is nice. I'm never going to complain about a loss or never going to complain about a win. The alternative of being a loss is I'll take the win every time, right? Whether it's ugly, whether it's pretty, whether it's by 17 points, whether it's by 4 points in a game that you felt like you did everything you possibly could to give it away at the end of the game. Regardless, wins are wins. They're hard to come by. I want the team to win, and if I have opinions on how the team is well constructed or well suited or ill suited to go about their business, I want them to prove me right or wrong by winning. And they won. I think the model in which the Dolphins implemented to win this game, not super sustainable, with the lack of balance offensively. I love that we have continued the trend of leaning into the identity that we have found with this football team. Mike McDaniel said after the game that this is the most physical stretch of play that they have ever had in his tenure here. I would agree with that. And in watching some of the run game tape in this game, I would continue to agree with that. It's not perfect. You've got a young back trying to bounce on 4th and short with an opportunity to stick your nose in the pile or go up over the top. Right. And Patrick Paul in that instance gets washed down, and it kind of makes it muddy for whether or not you can run in there if you're Ollie Gordon. But what you can't do is stop your feet and try and bounce and get lateral. It was kind of one of the reps in this game in which we did not play with the requisite physicality in the run game. But they are finding a bunch of different ways to get after teams in different fronts up front. And I think that's a really promising development for if they stay the course with this coaching staff. At the end of the season, this is your blueprint. Here's your model. And at the end of the day, you can come up with whatever timing, pass game concepts that you want. But if you can control and dictate the line of scrimmage with consistency, there ain't no magic pill that you can take as an opposing team to cover for we physically cannot match at the line of scrimmage. And that will continue to be the roster construction challenge that the Dolphins are faced with. And there's going to be games in which the Dolphins play the rest of the way this season and into years in the future in which they're not going to consistently win and dictate the line of scrimmage. And what you do in those games is where your limitations are going to show up. Now, thankfully, it didn't get you in this game. I do think there were some surprising numbers and yields from this game. Like I have the advanced passing numbers for Tua Tagovailoa up in this game. You want to take a stab at what his average time to throw against the Saints was? It's 2.82 seconds. You know what his average depth of target on his 23 attempts was? Did you have 11 yards downfield on average across 23 attempts? That is a lot of aggressiveness down the field and holding the ball. So when you got through the end of the bye week, you kind of came away and said, hey, we played Washington and we were really conservative and a lot of throws at or near the line of scrimmage. So whether it was by intent or as a reaction to how New Orleans chose to play you, your response in this game coming out of the bye was to try to open up the offense and try to be more aggressive and push the ball downfield. And the consistency was not where it needs to be. I'm going to do my best to not make this another 30 minutes of obsessing over Tua Tagovailoa because I think there's a lot of great things to talk about in this game. We know what the deal is with Tua at this stage. This season in particular, there's been regression in areas that have been strengths in years past, and the limitations feel more limiting than they've ever felt. How much of that is the indefinite future? How much of that is a regression that you feel can be fixed? That's for Mike McDaniel and the Dolphins brass to figure out. This is not the same player he was last year or the year before that or the year before that. And not in a good way. And that's where it's alarming for Miami. But you came out and you tried to work some more intermediate passing game here and be a little bit more aggressive. And it was the efficiency and the placement was not where it needed to be. And the decision-making, frankly, was not where it needed to be either. But I was very surprised to come out of this game after the way that the Dolphins kind of came back around to, hey, we're going to be really hairpin trigger and get the ball out fast, and we're not going to hold the ball past 2.5 seconds, and we're going to have some manufactured throws. You didn't really get that in this game. That was a surprise to me. I thought they'd lean more into that, especially with them continuing to have success passing the ball. Now, I think we turned down some opportunities to take some completions that would have brought the average depth of target down and brought your completion percentage back up. But Tua didn't make those decisions, right? So I was surprised to find out an average depth of target of 11.2 yards downfield with all the success that they had running the ball. As far as other surprises, I was surprised we only got one snap of Larry Borom versus Austin Jackson, who took over effectively full-time. Mike kind of teased during the week that, I don't think it's just a matter of Austin comes back and is automatically in football playing shape. I'd expect to see Larry Borom. Well, they didn't play it out that way. That was a surprise for me. Not a surprise for me, but something that I was glad to see was the utilization for Miami of the ancillary wide receivers is way down in this game. It was Jalen Waddle at 54 snaps out of a possible 59. Then it was Malik Washington at 36. You had tight ends Julian Hill, Darren Waller, and Greg Dulcich all over 20 snaps, between 20 and 33 snaps apiece. The third highest snap-taking wide receiver is Nick Westbrook-Ikine. Cedric Wilson then got 10 snaps. D. Eskridge got 2 snaps. You could give the 15 non-Cedric Wilson wide receiver 3 snaps to Cedric Wilson as far as I'm concerned. Because Nick, between special teams and not going after the onside kick that the Saints then went on to collect because the ball touched somebody, apparently, and the illegal formation for not being on the line of scrimmage. Gang, it's November 30th. Today, it's December 1st today. Alignment formational issues this late in the season, can't have it. And the Dolphins have generally done a good job of weeding a lot of that out. So for me, from a personnel standpoint, Alec Ingold got a stinger, so we didn't see a ton of him. He was listed as questionable returning, ends up only playing 14 snaps for you. But the tight ends do the heavy lifting. And I think those guys, they did a pretty sturdy job with their respective roles. Greg Dulcich continues to be a player I'm excited about potentially as a future piece, right? And then you add in Daniel Brunskill, got 19. So really technically there's 4 tight ends here that are all getting run. And what that does for the Dolphins in the run game, obviously, is that they have a great deal of success. De'Von Achane, right end, 5 for 55. Right guard, 3 for 22. Left guard, 3 for 24. So that's 7.3, 8.0, and 11 yards a carry. We didn't really run outside to the left all that much in this game. Between left end and left tackle combined, there's 4 carries for 7 yards on those two stretches combined. They don't really mash up the middle, but they found some success in the B gaps, which is a nice change for Miami. Who it felt like the Saints were kind of spamming, getting hard edges, and they reacted accordingly. So, all things considered, the Dolphins run the ball 32 times for 164 yards, average over 5 yards a carry. Tua, they tried to add some intermediate passing to that. Didn't manifest itself all that much. Personnel, I think we're trending in the right direction with a lot of the usage. I like how a lot of this dust is settling, and I think it's setting a very clear roadmap, in my opinion, to evaluate what you can build on, who should be back, and what needs to be different if you're going to stay the course with this coaching staff. And again, I'm not going to, this is not the show to get into whether it's right or wrong to do that. We're in evaluation mode. We're talking about everything and every outcome. I know there's some that want to tell me that it's a waste of breath to talk about GM candidates because they're just going to give Champ Kelly the job, right? I don't believe that to be the case. I think Champ Kelly deserves a serious consideration for the position, and if you deem he's the right guy, great. But I don't think it's auto lock in. Don't talk about candidates because they're not going to change. Just like don't talk about coaching candidates because don't talk about quarterbacks because they're not going to change. We don't know. We have to be prepared for everything. Let's talk about the defensive side of the ball, some snap counts on that side of the football as well. That's coming your way next here in this Club Dub episode of Locked On Dolphins. They were rocking and rolling with a bunch of heavy personnel packages, running the football over 5 yards a clip with more than 30 carries. I'm digging it. I don't dig all of it, but that part of it, I'm digging. We're getting into more next. Make sure you guys stick with us. The World Cup is coming back to North America for the first time since 1994, and with 48 teams for the first time ever, it's going to be massive. Let's be honest, getting tickets for these events is usually the hardest part. It's why GameTime app is so clutch. It finally gives fans a real advantage when it comes to snagging seats. With GameTime, you can track price drops in real time, get alerts when great seats open up, and buy tickets the moment they hit the app. It puts the power back in your hands and makes going to the World Cup realistic instead of impossible. You can pull up the app, take the layout, makes it so simple to scroll through matchups and compare seat views. You pick a game, tap a section, and have your tickets locked in within minutes. There's no confusion and no hunting for fine print. So take the guesswork out of buying World Cup tickets. Every match, every concert or event with GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms to apply. Again, download the app, create an account. Use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Swipe, tap, tip, go. Download GameTime today. On the defensive side of the football, Miami here, I think the big development is we got the Chop Robinson reps that we've kind of been wondering, is Chop gonna get that elevated role? We had 72 total defensive snap opportunities. Bradley Chubb plays 58% of them. Chop Robinson played 45. He was the second highest snapping edge defender in the room. Matthew Judon with 37. And then for other edges, you got to go down to Cam Good played 1. So it's really, we got a lot of guys rolling as far as the defensive interior. You want to talk about surprises. It's a surprise to me that Zeke Biggers plays 31 snaps. Benito Jones plays 16. Jordan Phillips plays 22. Kenneth Grant plays 32. You go back to when Anthony Weaver first got here and talk about wanting to have like first and second waves of players to throw at opposing teams. Zach Sieler playing 51, and opposite Zach, Grant 33, Biggers 31, Phillips 22, Benito Jones 16. You got a pretty good robust rotation here on the defensive interior, and 3 of those guys are rookies. I don't dig all of it, but that part of it, I'm digging. What I'm not digging is Dante Trader and a reduced defensive role. I'm surprised to see him he's getting single-digit snaps. He played 20 defensive snaps in the last 2 games combined. And I thought Trader, kind of came in and flashed with a couple of his run fits and had 2 run stops in this game. between playing on the second level, was out on the slot, not playing a lot on the roof of the defense, but it's a promising player who's had some bright flashes that I would want to continue to see more of relative to the alternatives of Ife Melifonwu's playing 56 snaps, whereas Ashton Davis played 69 snaps. He played all but 3 snaps in this game, right? As a contrast to Minkah Fitzpatrick, who played every snap but one and was elite in this contest. Very cool to find out that not only does Minkah log his first career interception safety on a 2-point attempt. He'd never done that before in his career. He never had a sack before. So Minkah multiple career firsts in fueling the defensive effort for the Dolphins, which was one of their best EPA performances defensively of the season, right? And you can't help but sit here and wonder what it would look like if the rush was a little bit more complementary to pressure Shuck. The 2-minute defensive effort down the stretch here where the Saints win tempo, I think that's something that's got to be looked at. And then we got to get guys with their hands in the dirt and ready to rush the passer. It felt like as they picked the tempo up, the Dolphins really didn't have a lot in the way of push and pressure down the stretch at the end of the game. And look, the touchdown pass that Jack Jones gave up, when you look at in coverage, he's in Vele's hip pocket, running down the field. Vele gets his eyes back, and Shuck just kind of throws one out, kind of like it's going out of the back of the end zone. And as Vele's eyes are back, he sees it. And as the ball's being released, Vele is seeing the ball as Jack Jones is turning his head. And I think the teaching point there, right, is if you're in main coverage, just stay plastered on your guy. So he ends up falling off of the receiver because the receiver's back to the ball and sees the ball while you're stopped and everybody's standing still. And then you go to look, and it's that half second is all you need, right? So not a great play in that sense from Jack Jones, but I think a very easily correctable. Hey, if he's here as an assignment, just keep him, right? Like don't go looking for extra. But, Miami defensively from a pass rush perspective, it was a well-rounded. I think that was one thing that was nice. I'd like to see somebody with a little bit more consistent pressure. But Chop Robinson logged 3 pressures in this game, had obviously the sack and a half in this game. He's stabilized a little bit. He's got 8 pressures the last 4 games, going back to the Atlanta game. That's relative to 1, 2, 3. I'm going to do math in real time. This is begging for trouble. 4, 5, 6, 7. He had 6 pressures in the first 7 games of the season, and now he's got 8 in the last 4, right? So progress, still not where we need it to be. There's still too many splash opportunities up front that I think the team is not making between Bradley Chubb. Bradley Chubb had a run stuff and another sack. Bradley Chubb would have another $900,000 in his pocket for this season in incentive money for sack performance if he could finish some of these splash plays he's getting, because he had another one that slipped through his fingers against New Orleans. So as you're doing the thing that we're doing on offense, where you're looking at the roadmap and you say, okay, like what are we building off of? What do we have here? It's nice to see kind of the stability of the back end. And if for my opinion, off a game like this, where Rasul Douglas has a big play, but also has kind of a couple instances where his ability to turn and run with guys got tested a little bit, and he gets tagged for a touchdown pass in that regard. If you're looking at Jack Jones, right, as a guy who's here on a 1-year deal, was phenomenal against Washington, was a little bit more up and down and unstable with his play this week against New Orleans. I'm coming away from a game like this, and I'm saying if they end up staying the course, if they end up sustaining the coaching staff, I can start to put together a wish list of things on the defensive side of the ball. And it needs to be splash players, right? It's players that this was supposed to be based off of their body of work, a collection and a group of guys that hunt the football on the back end, right? And Jack's been feast or famine, and he got his first pick. And the Dolphins are one of the worst teams in the league as far as generating interceptions. Now, they've had a ton of punch-outs, and shots on goal is what they refer to them as once you get the ball carrier wrapped up, come through here and punch the football, right? And I love that they've taken to the coaching point in that regard. But your wish list on defense is you want impact play. I think there's a pretty good floor of executing the scheme right now. And I think that's a testament to Anthony Weaver and his group, having settled in and got time on task and learning how to play together. Who are the guys that move the needle? Who are the guys that manufacture wins in pass rush situations with consistency, but do so without compromising the integrity of your pass rush as a whole, and letting Tyler Shutt get outside the pocket, or letting Marcus Mariota get outside the pocket, or letting Lamar Jackson get outside the pocket? That's on the wish list right now, because that group's going to look dramatically different next year and the year after that. After you get a few more NFL drafts and some free agency, and you offload some dead cap and some finances for big players, and you reallocate that back into your spending power, it's going to look pretty dramatically different. Same for the secondary. At least for the secondary, I could say, hey, Minkah Fitzpatrick's under contract yet next year. I'd like to figure out a way to make that work. We got some young guys like Trader in the secondary at safety. Jack Jones is a player who on a 1-year contract for a low dollar amount with minimal guarantees. Like, I'd be interested in running it back with him on a 1-year deal. Please don't confuse that as me saying we need to pay Jack Jones like competitive starter money to be a starter. But I think you at least have some pieces that you could say, hey, maybe it behooves us to, if we stay the course, bring some of these guys back, so that the integration next year is not just, continuity of the coaching staff, but you also have some continuity with some of the personnel too, so that you don't start a season 1-6. I don't know that you're going to have that luxury on the edge. But these are all thoughts that I have coming out of a game against New Orleans in which the defense as a whole largely played well. A couple plays down the stretch, they hit you with some tempo. I didn't think they appropriately adjusted in that regard. But some game balls coming your way next here. Locked on Dolphins Club Dub episode celebrating our 5th win of the season. That's next. Make sure you guys stick with us. The holiday season is one of the best times in sports. There's bowl games, big basketball matchups, playoff pushes, all happening at once. While we're making choices every day, the most fun ones are the ones that can get you paid, and getting the right call on Prize Picks can indeed get you paid. Prize Picks is the easiest way to get in on daily fantasy. Pick more or less on at least 2-player projections, lock in your lineup, and you are in the game. It's simple, fast, available in 45 states, including California, Texas, Florida, and Georgia. Prize Picks has an added extra layer of excitement for the holiday sports schedule. You can create a lineup in less than a minute, and the app makes the whole process smooth and intuitive. You choose from a huge range of unique stats: fantasy score, field goals attempted, free throws made, turnovers, whatever fits your strategy. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use code LOCKEDONNFL. Get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, it is so good to be right. Game balls for the Dolphins. Week 13 win over the New Orleans Saints. I'm not going to be as robust as what Mike McDaniel is. If you caught the post-game locker room video, Mike McDaniel gave out some extensive game balls for the Dolphins and their effort on all sides, including like Austin Jackson got one for his return to action. We had Riley Patterson with the 4 field goals. We had Minkah. Game balls for me starts with Minkah Fitzpatrick, though, because he made splash plays in multiple phases that cut short multiple possessions and also directly put points on the board that could have been deciding points. Like, there is a world where Minkah gets intercepted and tripped at the goal line, and there's no 2 points, and then you give up the onside kick, and the Saints need 2 points to tie and 3 points to take the lead, and they got the onside kick with one timeout and like a minute left in the game. Would not have been a very fun place to be, knowing a field goal loses you this football game. Man, that would have been awful. So Minkah in the splash plays, I think deserves a ton of love. I think De'Von Achane, for continuing to be the engine of the offense, deserves plenty of love in the way of a game ball as well. I think those are the two obvious low-hanging fruit recognition pieces of this Dolphins effort against the Saints. If I had to pick a third, it's tough because there's a part of me that would want to recognize somebody for the effort up front offensively, because you continue to really get after folks. There's a part of me that would want to recognize Zach Sieler for, I think, one of his best performances of the season, in my opinion. I'm trying to think of a game in which he was pretty good against the Jets in week 4. I think he had like a half dozen pressures in that game, and I don't think the pressures were there, but like the run stuffs, he obviously recovers the fumble that was forced by Minkah Fitzpatrick. I'd probably go Zach Sieler, right? Because it's game balls. Sometimes they're a manifestation of an individual season and an individual game and an individual effort. But sometimes game balls can be about something bigger. Sometimes game balls can be about the journey of the season. And I think my journey of the season game ball for this game is Zach, because he recovers the fumble and he's involved in a big play and a turnover in that regard. He individually played well and was disruptive. But also, like, Zach was the guy who was kind of nailed down to be the shepherd of the flock of these young defensive tackles. And every single one of those guys gave you meaningful contributions in this win against the Saints, who were down some guys up front, and we're obviously down Alvin Kamara. But I did not walk into the game feeling, you've got a really dramatic talent advantage in that individual element of the Saints offense. I felt pretty good about the limited weaponry in the passing game and your ability to put caps on that, and a young quarterback with a simulated pressure scheme to create some confusion. And sure enough, Rasul Douglas gets the interception. That was a trap coverage on the perimeter versus Minkah Fitzpatrick. It was just they ran red zone and doubled up the two most dangerous threats, including Chris Olave, and everybody else is in man-to-man coverage. And Minkah takes a great break on a crosser over the middle and it undercuts it. So I think the journey of the season game ball for Zach, for what his entire room, knowing what he's been charged with this season to have to do for that group, having a strong individual performance stacked on top of that, he'd be the one guy I would want to give some love to as well. And that's not to slight like Riley Patterson for the 4 field goals, because obviously you don't win this game without any of the scores that you got. That's what Minkah said when they find the DB room, find Rasul Douglas for not house calling his interception and getting tackled by Dylan Raduns. Minkah said, we needed every point we can get today, right? So I think the peeks behind the curtain in that regard are a lot of fun. But that's our Club Dub episode for this week's victory over the New Orleans Saints. The Dolphins now sit at 5-7. Try not to stew too much thinking about a play here and a play there and how this season could be different. You are what your record says you are. The Dolphins were a team with a lot of transition and a lot of youth. And early in the season, unfortunately, that showcased itself and manifested itself in a win-loss record that was not where anybody wanted to be. But now at 5-7, game in the division against the New York Jets coming up here next Sunday. We will get you guys ready for that game. We will have a squad show on Wednesday. We will kind of work through some of the tape. We'll do some big picture conversations. We'll have our crossover with John Butchko with Jets. I kind of circle back to that team who's now 3-9, kind of winning their way out of the top of the NFL draft order. So there's some interesting storylines there to get into as well. So we got you covered. That's why it is your team every day here on the Locked On Network. I'm Kyle Krabs. Hope you guys enjoy the show. Make it a great rest of your day. Enjoy Club Dub for another week. Drinks from the back. Put your feet up. Make yourself cozy. And here's to us staying another week as well. Kyle Krabs, talk to you all again soon. Go Fins.